Yo, this video is sponsored by Artless. Let's get it. The new Sony 50mm F1.4 G Master. Impressively lightweight, 516 grams, 14 elements and 11 group optical design, 11 bladed aperture. Features dual linear XD autofocus motors, 67mm filter thread, declickable aperture ring with lock, weather sealing, $1,299 US.
Why is the fuzz on? Sorry. Why is the fuzz on the camera?
It's a wind sock.
Oh, okay.
Hey, what up, y'all? Tight Shirt Terry Warfield, back for another video. Hey, we down here in the mean streets of Cleveland, and today, as you saw in the intro, we talking about that new 50mm F1.4 Gangster mode. Now, I brought my girl Ange with me. Say hey, Ange. I brought my dude Abe with me. He gonna be doing some pickup shots, and we gonna test this lens out. So we gonna walk around, get some photos, some videos, and make some comparisons with the $2,000 50mm F1.2 Gangster mode, so you can see if you can spot a difference. Let's get it. All right, man, we had to come to the car. It's freezing outside. He over there trying to warm up his hands like a little girl. Look at him, cold. I was just playing. It is cold outside. But listen, these pictures and video clips actually came out fire. They look really, really good. Almost comparable to my 50mm F1.2 Gangster mode. So we're going to kick it up a notch. We're going to switch locations, and I'm going to pull out the 50 F1.2, and I'm going to do some comparison shots to see if, number one, you can spot the difference, but number two, if the F1.2, F1.4 bokeh effect is worth another $800, because to me, that's the main difference between these two. It's the F1.2 versus the F1.4. Image quality, they both smack. They got the same type of aperture blade design. They got the same coatings and everything. So for me, the real difference is 1.2 versus 1.4, and we about to find out if that's worth $800. Let's get it. Now hold on just one second. Matter of fact, come a little bit closer. I need to tell you about today's sponsor, Artless. Honestly, one of the best platforms out there for content creators. There's over 22,000 high quality royalty-free songs updated on a daily basis, and over 27,000 sound effects also updated on a daily basis, and they're all curated by mood, genre, instrumental, etc. So for example, I knew for this video I wanted to use some type of like epic transformer type music, right? So I literally just went to the filter system and put in mood, epic, dramatic, and my song was right there on the first page. I didn't need to dig through 10 pages to find a quality song that fit. There's music, sound effects, there's even video templates, overlays, plugins, openers, titles. All of that stuff is available through Artless, and there's a package for every type of content creator. So you can kind of tailor your own experience. So the packages start at $9.99 a month if you just need like music and sound effects for your socials, or I would actually encourage you to check out Artless Max. It includes all of your music, sound effects, video overlays, templates, plugins, all of that stuff is included. And there's even a second tier which gets you access to all that stuff, plus editing software that is actually really, really robust. So I'm not asking you to try Artless. I'm telling you, you need it. So hit the link below in the description. You'll get 2 free months at the end of your annual subscription, but it's for a limited time only. So make sure you go and check that out. Thank you to Artless for sponsoring this video. Let's get back to it. You look like a real gangster right now. You know that?
FX30.
He think he big timing out here because he just got his new FX30. But I got the big dog. I'm filming on the FX3. Now what? Now what, sucker? Hey, look. So look, Ange got her car over here, right? So she got a nice little BMW. She over here sitting down, being cool in the car. We're gonna see what she talking about. Hi.
Hi.
Do you think some of these pictures have been coming out fire so far?
Oh no, they're great.
They're great?
They're great.
It's a nice car, by the way.
Thank you.
How do they find you on Instagram?
Ange, yes. Ange, period, yes.
Ange, period, yes. Okay, Boca Bandits, we got to figure out if there's a big enough difference between F1.2 and F1.4. Obviously, there's a difference at how much light that the lenses can collect, but it's not that big of a deal, especially dealing with modern Sony cameras and how sensitive they are when it comes to ISO and low light capability. So we're about to see if that extra difference of 1.2 versus 1.4 for the Boca Bandits, the Boca snobs, is worth that extra $800. Let's get it. All right, look, so Ange had to leave, so I actually think I'm about to go home. I'm gonna open up Lightroom and we're gonna take a look at some of these photos together to see if we can spot some differences. And there's also a few other things I wanna test out. Plus it's cold, plus I want some coffee. Let's go. Okay, I'm sitting outside, I'm at the crib. Hey, before we get into Lightroom, I wanna do a quick breathing test to see if the 51.4 breathes more than the 51.2. Let me throw that on the screen. This is the 50mm f1.2. As you see, I'm doing some long pulls, I'm doing some short pulls, and it does have some breathing there. It's not major, and again, if you got a new Sony camera, of course you can run breather compensation, but here is the 50mm f1.4, and again, I'm doing some long pulls, I'm doing some short pulls, and to be honest, they look pretty similar, so I don't really think one has the edge over the other when it comes to breathing, but I wanted y'all to see it. Now, let's get into Lightroom. All right, so we got Lightroom open, and I got some images queued up to take a look at. Oh, look at Macho, he's so cute, fuzzy, and bad. All right, so look, this is wide open f1.4. If we punch in on Macho's cute little face, we see that there's plenty of detail, it's nice and sharp. Out of focus area looks great. I really hate leaving Macho in the cage, but he tends to pee on stuff when I'm not around, so he's in there. Anyways, let's go on to the next image. If we take a look at Anne's, this picture y'all saw earlier in the video, if we punch in on the eye, super sharp. I actually think it grabbed focus on her eyelash instead of her eye, but either way, still sharp if we look at the out of focus area. We take a look at this bokeh ball back here. This is wide open, and it does have a little bit, I mean, just a tiny bit of like an onion ring effect, right? And there is some ghosting around the bokeh ball, but overall, super sharp, great image. This image punching into her eye again, super sharp. Hair looks great, eyelashes look great, eye looks great. Out of focus area also looks great. We do get a little bit of fringing right here. Now, these images, I did have the built-in corrections in camera turned on. Now, in the other images I'm gonna show y'all, I turned it off, and I'll let you know when I turned it off, right? Next image, another great image that y'all saw earlier in the video. Again, if we punch into the eye, plenty of detail, looks great. Rendering looks great. Out of focus area, same thing, looks great. Man, these images are butter. Now, let's move on to the next one, right? Because this is f1.2 versus f1.4. Now, obviously we were outside, so y'all know how shooting outside, the lighting situation, the white balance situation can literally change from second to second. So there are some differences when it comes to tint, etc., right? The next thing is I tried to keep my hands in the same place, but without a tripod, that's pretty much freaking impossible. But anyways, this is the 50mm f1.2 Gangster mode, right? And as we see, the background is straight bokeh, man. If we move into her eyes, super sharp. Overall, the image looks great. This image is shot with the 50mm f1.4. Now, again, the entire background is still all the way bokeh out. And if we punch in on her eye, it's still super sharp, right? Now, let's go back and forth real quick. So I have the eye pulled up on this. I have the eye pulled up on the 50mm f1.2. Obviously, in these two photos, the 51.2 is a tad softer because it's at f1.2, but I do think overall that the 50mm f1.4 overall is a tad sharper. And I'm talking about literally splitting freaking pixels. But let's go back and forth so y'all can see the difference in bokeh from f1.2 to f1.4. This is 1.2, this is 1.4, f1.2 versus f1.4. Now, let's go on to this next set of images. Now, in these images, I turned off all profile corrections in the camera. So this is the 50mm f1.4, and I want to show you what the vignette looks like wide open. As you see at f1.4, the vignette is there. F2 starts to clean up. By F2.8, it's pretty much freaking gone. Now, I also did the same thing with the 50mm F1.2 G Master, right? So this is 50mm F1.2. The vignette is there, and 1.4 starts to clean up. I'm sure by F2, it will probably be gone also. But I really want to look for fringing, green fringing, purple fringing, all of that great stuff that you nerds like to look for. So let's go back to the 1.4 image right here and zoom in on this metal can, because it's the metallic surfaces that typically show it, and it is very well controlled. You don't really see any on the letters. This will be your Loca, and overall it just, you know, really resists flaring even wide open. If we take a look at the window, there is a very slight amount of green fringing around the window frame, and again, once you turn on profile corrections, this stuff will pretty much freaking disappear. Now let's go to the 1.2. The 1.2 is also very well controlled when we pull up the metallic box. If we pull up the letters, there's pretty much no fringe in there. If we take a look at the window on the F1.2 wide open, same thing. There is some fringing, a very slight amount, but it's very well controlled. And again, once you enable profile corrections, that stuff disappears. The next set of images is another bokeh test. So F1.2 versus F1.4. This is F1.2 versus F1.4. Yes, there is a difference, but it is a very slight difference. But for some people, that very slight difference could be worth it. Now, I also want to show you the difference in exposure bias. So I had to expose both of these for 0, right? Both of them at ISO 100 and wide open. So our only variable was shutter speed. So to get a 0 exposure at F1.2 with this image, I had to go with 1/320th of a second. And the F1.4 image, same thing. I could only do 1/250th of a second. So there is a difference when it comes to light gathering ability. However, is that difference big enough for you? I don't even know. Let's move on to these shots of the BMW sitting outside. This is the F1.4. If we punch into the BMW logo, come on now. All right, we see that there is a little bit of fringing, which is to be expected. It's a metallic surface in broad daylight. If we go F1.2, do the same thing. There's more fringing on the F1.2 image, but that's also to be expected because it's F1.2 versus F1.4. Sharpness wise, both of them look fantastic, plenty of detail. And let's take a look at the headlight. If we get super nerdy and zoom in, this is 1.4. There's a little bit of purple fringing in here. If we go over to the F1.2 image and do the same thing, obviously there's more because we shot it at F1.2. Lastly, another vignette test. This is wide open at F1.4. If we stop down to F2, it starts to go away. If we stop down to F2.8 vignette, it's almost pretty much gone. So very fair comparison. I feel like the F1.4 lightweight held this weight. Not lightweight, it did hold this weight against the F1.2 gangster mode. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I guess we should go ahead and wrap up the saga on a 50mm F1.4 gangster mode, because a lot of y'all are gonna have some comments, right? So I think the biggest comment is gonna be like, who asked for another 50mm, right? There's 10,000 of them, and I'm a little different because I'd rather have 10,001 lens choices than 10,000, but that's just me. But I get it. A lot of people are going to say, why did we need another 50mm? Sony has 50mm already. There's a ton of third-party 50mm out there. So I'm mainly speaking to the people who want to stay with Sony. They don't want to use third-party glass. Sony does have other 50mm, but none of them can come close to the 50mm f1.2 gangster mode. I'm sorry, they just can't. However, this thing is $2,000 and worth every penny, but I understand everybody don't want to spend $2,000 on a lens. However, there are a lot of people who want the sauce from the 50mm f1.2. So they want the construction, right? They want the aperture ring. They want the iris lock. They want the image quality. They want all of the things that this lens offers. They want it, but they maybe don't want to spend the $2,000. And that is where the 50mm f1.4 comes in, because to be honest, we looked at the images together. We looked at the video together. The images in like the quality is fantastic out of the 50mm f1.4. In fact, I found it difficult to spot, besides the fact that I took them, I found it difficult to spot the differences between the two of them image quality wise. Sure, we were shooting outside, so maybe, you know, one of them might have had a different tint than the other and stuff like that, but that's what happens when you shoot outside. But as a whole, like the image quality between both of them is comparable. The main thing is the f1.2 versus the f1.4. And when it comes to bokeh, yes, you can spot a difference. Absolutely, f1.2 is creamier, but f1.4 can still deliver some absolutely stunning, and I'm talking about stunning results that most people will be fine with and don't need the f1.2. So I'm gonna be honest, right? The F1.4 is $1299. The G Master is $2 grand. That is a $700 difference. And you are getting, in my opinion, about 96% of the performance of the 50mm F1.2 at roughly 35 to 40% of the cost. I just did that math in my head. I could be wrong, but you get what I'm saying. You could get really, really close to the 50mm F1.2 for a much cheaper price by going with the 50mm F1.4, and it's smaller. It's got a 67mm filter thread versus a 72mm filter thread, and I do feel like the 50mm F1.4 is just a tad sharper. I'm talking about a tad. I'm talking about like splitting pixels sharper, but I do feel like it does have a slight advantage there, right? So it's hard for me to say if you got some money to spend, unless you just want the absolute creme de la creme that Sony has to offer when it comes to 50. It's hard for me to tell you should buy the 50mm F1.2 over the 50mm F1.4 because this lens for Sony users is such a crazy value for 50mm prime G Master. It's butter, yo. So I'm gonna leave links for both of them down in the description, and make sure that you let me know in the comments how you feel about this, man. Are you getting it? Are you gonna, maybe get the F1.2, or what are you thinking? And also, don't forget, if you're creative, get you a subscription to Artless Max. You will thank me later. Link down there for that also. Till next time, I'm out of here. Piece of chicken grease, tight shirt, Terry Warfield. I'm out. Peace.